Why did so many American airmen climb into planes they knew might never return? How did young men barely out of high school fly straight into walls of exploding steel day after day for months on end? And what did it feel like to fight a war 5 miles above the earth, where the air itself could kill you before the enemy ever had the chance? Let's begin. December 11th, 1943. RAF Bassingbourn, England. 3 o'clock hours. Inside a freezing Mason hut, Sergeant William Harris, 22 years old from Dayton, Ohio, pulls on layers of wool and leather. Long johns, flight suit, flak vest, Mae Westlife jacket, parachute harness. Each layer adds weight. Each layer is insurance against death, or maybe just a way to delay it. Outside, his aircraft waits on the hardstand. A Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress named Heaven Can Wait. It's her 12th mission. The odds say she won't make 25. The target today, Bremen, a major port and submarine factory on Germany's northern coast. Heavy flak. Fighter opposition expected. In a pre-dawn darkness, the engines start one by one, coughing blue fire into the cold. 4 Wright Cyclone radials, each worth 1,000 horsepower. The sound shakes the ground. Men shout final checks over the roar. Oxygen on, guns loaded, fuel lines primed. At 6:15, the green flare rises. Taxi. Go point one by one. The fortresses roll down the runway, tail to tail, and climb into the foggy English morning. A formation of steel, courage, and nervous laughter. The bomber war over Europe was unlike anything the world had ever seen. It was part science, part suicide, and entirely human. From 1942 through 1945, more than 350,000 American airmen flew with the 8th Air Force out of England. Of those, 26,000 were killed, more than the entire U.S. Marine Corps lost in the Pacific. 60,000 more were wounded or captured. Their average age? 19. They were called the Boys of the 8th. They fought not in trenches or jungles, but in the thin blue space between life and death. A war fought in freezing temperatures and bursting shells, where courage meant sitting still while the sky tried to tear you apart. A T-25,000 feet, Heaven Can Wait joins the main bomber stream. Hundreds of fortresses and liberators, stretching from horizon to horizon, each one holding 10 men with 10 different prayers. They form up in tight box formations, precision flying that leaves only yards between wingtips. In training, they were told that formation flying would protect them. In combat, they learned it made them a single, massive target. The temperature outside the plane drops to 40 below zero. Breathing without oxygen means blacking out in seconds. Touching bare metal means losing skin. Inside the fuselage, frost creeps across the walls like lace. The gunners flex their hands, checking the twin .50 caliber Brownings mounted in every window. They're kids playing with machines designed to destroy cities. Below them, Europe rolls by in shades of gray. The coast of Belgium, then Holland, then the endless flat farmlands of northern Germany. Each minute brings them closer to Bremen, closer to flak, closer to the unknown. The first black puffs appear ahead. German anti-aircraft fire, flak, bursting in patterns of death. Each shell explodes with jagged shrapnel that can shred a wing or a man in an instant. The pilots call it the black snow. The sound inside the plane changes. Sharp metallic pings as fragments tear through aluminum. A hole the size of a fist appears in the fuselage behind the radio operator. Nobody flinches. They just look at it, mark it in their minds, and keep flying. Over the intercom, the pilot's voice crackles. Flak ahead. Stay sharp. Fighters soon. He's right. Minutes later, they see them. Specks rising from the clouds below. Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs, sleek and fast, climbing to intercept. The formation tightens. Gunners swing their turrets to bear. The sky turns into chaos. The enemy attacks head-on, a tactic called the 12 o'clock high run. It gives them the best chance to hit the cockpit, the pilot, the bombardier. Heaven Can Wait's chin turret opens fire first. .50 caliber tracers streak through the thin air, glowing orange against the gray sky. A German fighter flashes past, so close Harris can see the pilot's scarf whipping in the wind. The ball turret gunner screams into the mic, "Got one. He's smoking." Then the waist gunner's window explodes inward. A burst of cannon fire shreds the oxygen lines. Harris feels something hot tear through his shoulder. He looks down, half in shock, half in disbelief, at the blood soaking into his glove. The mission has only just begun. Bombing in daylight was an American idea. The British bombed at night, using darkness for protection, but sacrificing accuracy. The Americans believed in precision, hitting factories, oil plants, rail yards, not cities. To do that, they had to see their targets. And to see them, they had to fly in daylight through the heaviest defenses in history. It was a noble idea that killed tens of thousands of young men before it worked. In 1943, bomber crews were required to complete 25 missions before they could go home. The average crew made it through 8. They called it the 25 Mission Impossible. At the front of the formation, the lead bombardier begins his run. Bomb bay doors open. The wind howls through the fuselage as the massive doors slide apart beneath them. The target comes into view, the shipyards of Bremen, already hidden under a blanket of smoke and fire. The bombardier locks the Norden bomb sight onto the aim point. Steady, steady, bombs away. 5,000 pounds of high explosive drop from the plane, tumbling through the freezing air toward the city below. The moment they leave the racks, the bomber lifts slightly, lighter by several tons. The bombardier closes the doors. The crew exhales. They turn for home, but getting home was often harder than getting there. Flak still waits over the coast. Fuel runs low. Engines fail. Wounded men bleed quietly in the cold. And the long flight back to England is filled with silence. The kind of silence that weighs more than the bombs ever did. By the time heaven can wait crosses the North Sea, the formation is scattered. Smoke trails mark where planes went down. Some fell in flames. Others limped out to sea, disappearing into the clouds. The crew doesn't talk about it. They just watch the horizon, waiting for the gray outline of England to appear. When it finally does, they cheer. But even landing isn't safe. Flak damage makes control tricky. They touch down hard, skid down the runway, and come to rest in a plume of smoke and steam. The medics pull Harris out first, blood frozen to his jacket. He's alive. So is most of the crew. 2 of them aren't. That night, in the mess hall, the survivors drink coffee that tastes like heaven and stare at the empty seats that used to belong to their friends. Tomorrow, new replacements will arrive to fill those spots. And in 2 days, the mission board will list another target. Schweinfurt, Regensburg, Berlin. The names blur together into a list of coordinates and casualties. Between 1942 and 1945, American bomber crews flew more than 400,000 combat sorties over Europe. They dropped 640,000 tons of bombs. And they paid for every ton with lives. During the worst months of 1943, the casualty rate for bomber crews reached 30% per mission. That means a man had less than a 1 in 5 chance of surviving his tour. Statistically, the life expectancy of a B-17 crewman over Germany was about 2 weeks. Yet they kept going. Why? Ask 10 veterans, and you'll get 10 answers. Some said it was duty, the belief that every factory destroyed meant fewer American boys dying on the beaches later. Some said it was pride, the fear of being labeled a coward. Some said it was because their buddies went, and you don't let your buddies go alone. But most said it was simpler than that. It was our job. Somebody had to do it. Life on a bomber base was a strange mix of routine and terror. Days of boredom, cleaning guns, playing poker, writing letters, punctuated by mornings of chaos when the siren wailed and the crews ran for their planes. Superstition ruled. Lucky jackets, lucky coins, lucky cigarettes. Some refused to shave before a mission. Others carried rabbits' feet or photos of sweethearts tucked into their flak vests. When you live on borrowed time, you start believing in anything that might buy you one more day. The air war evolved. By mid-1944, long-range P-51 Mustangs could escort the bombers all the way to the target and back. Losses dropped. The bombers began to fly with confidence. The missions that once seemed suicidal now looked like victory in progress. But the scars remained. No one forgets watching a friend's plane explode beside them, or seeing parachutes that never opened. When the war finally ended, the survivors went home to a country that barely understood what they'd done. Ground soldiers got parades. Sailors got headlines. Bomber crews just went home quietly, carrying memories too heavy for words. For many, the transition was brutal. After years of living minute to minute, normal life felt empty. They'd been gods of the sky. Now they were clerks, farmers, teachers. Some found peace in family, others in silence. But all of them remembered the cold, the noise, and the endless sky. In Dayton, Ohio, William Harris married his high school sweetheart. He worked for General Motors, raised 2 kids, and never flew again. He couldn't stand the sound of piston engines or the smell of oil on metal. But every year on December 11th, he took out an old photograph of 10 young men standing in front of 17 named Heaven Can Wait and stared at it for a long time. 7 of them didn't make it home. Duddy never called himself a hero. None of them did. They just said they were lucky. Lucky to have made it through 25 missions. Lucky to have come home when so many didn't. The final numbers tell a story few remember today. Of every 100 men who flew with the 8th Air Force over Europe, 55 were killed in action. 12 became prisoners of war. 3 were shot down and escaped or evaded capture. Only 30 returned unscathed. Those odds make Vietnam look merciful. They make any war look merciful. But statistics don't capture the courage it took to climb back into that aluminum coffin morning after morning, to fly through black clouds of flak and enemy fire, to watch the plane next to you vanish in a flash of light, and keep flying straight and level because that was the job. They didn't do it for glory. They did it for each other. The pilot for the co-pilot. The navigator for the bombardier. The gunners for the man in the next turret. 10 men in a single machine, trusting each other with their lives in a sky that wanted them dead. When the war was over, the 8th Air Force had earned a nickname, the Mighty Eighth. They'd lost more men than the entire Marine Corps, more planes than the rest of the Air Force combined. But they'd helped cripple Nazi industry, pave the way for D-Day, and shorten the war in Europe by months, maybe years. Their sacrifice bought victory, and they paid for mile by mile, mission by mission, bomb run by bomb. Are you in that? Yes. Oh, why did they do it? Why climb into the sky knowing you might never return? Because that's what was asked of them. Because their country needed them. Because in 1943, when freedom was on fire, somebody had to fly through the flames. Sergeant William Harris did. So did tens of thousands of others. And when they came home, they didn't talk much about it. But every time a jet roared overhead, they looked up, not with fear, not with pride, but with memory. Because once you've flown through flak over Germany, once you've watched death blossom in black clouds around your wings, you never forget the sound, the cold, or the silence that follows. And you never forget the men who didn't make it back from the bomb run.